may not recognize his face, but you will likely recognize his work. Meet Steve McCurry, one of the world's most respected photographers and the man who captured the face of the Afghan girl, the photo that would become the cover of National Geographic and one of photography's most iconic. Arguably his most famous shot, but just one example of McCurry's talent for capturing moments in times of conflict.
I'm interested in people, how people are different, but yet how people are the same.
And capturing human emotion in portraiture. This week on Talk Asia, Magnum photographer Steve McCurry opens up about being one of the first to document the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan.
I met some refugees who told me that this war was raging literally right across the border.
Finding the young girl in that iconic photograph.
We didn't know her name, didn't know her tribe, practically nothing.
And why he was reported dead twice.
I mean, when does the government call your home with that kind of news?
Hello, Steve. Welcome to Talk Asia. If I can start from the very beginning, what was the initial thing that got you into photography? When did you first realize you had a passion for it?
I had an uncle who was a kind of a hobbyist photographer, and I used to look at his pictures and I thought that this really sounded like something I wanted to do. And when I started to travel, when I became 19, I traveled to Europe and lived in Europe for a year. And when I was in Europe, I lived with a family, and one of the children in the family was also a photographer. And we used to go out and take pictures in Stockholm and walk around and come back in the evening and develop the film. That was really where I thought, you know, this would be a great marriage of travel and photography. This is really something I could do for the rest of my life.
Do you remember what your very first photograph was?
My very first good photograph was in Mexico City. And I was walking down the street and there was a man sleeping in front of a furniture store, and he was exactly below this brand new sofa in the window. But he was asleep on the street, and he was the juxtaposition between him, this sort of homeless man, and this brand new sofa was a kind of, I thought, a perfect kind of a image. That's what really, I think, set me on my way to being a professional photographer, in fact.
Now, your portfolio is immense, but you always do portraits. What is it about that kind of photography that grabs you?
I'm interested in people, how people are different, but yet how people are the same. I mean, we all dress differently and speak different languages, maybe have different religions, but down deep fundamentally we still have this sort of common shared humanity, this commonality of, and that difference is what really fascinates me.
Photography is quite an invasive art form, though. I mean, you have to go up to a complete stranger and say, can I take your photo? You have to build some kind of a trust in a very short period of time so that they can give some appearance of feeling natural. I mean, how do you do that?
I think most people actually want to have their picture taken. I think most people, if you kind of win their confidence and their trust, I think people will open up and allow you to photograph them. But I find that once you explain what you're doing and you kind of bring them into your process, people are very happy to sort of cooperate and to sort of stand and let you take their picture. You usually have this sort of a period of a minute or two where people will kind of give you that amount of time, and then their curiosity runs out and then they have to go. So you have to work quickly, get your shot, get your picture, make them relaxed, and then and that's it.
Can it ever be completely relaxed though, or completely natural if there is a camera there?
Well, the object is to make this seem very ordinary, very matter of fact. Sometimes I just start to fiddle with my camera so that it takes their mind off of this whole event, and I try and almost slow everything down, and then I start to get what I want because they're starting to not pay attention to themselves. They're kind of just sort of looking at me, fussing with my camera.
So what's the best photo that you didn't take? The moment that you just missed and you thought, oh, I'll take a photo of that and it's gone. Do you have a lot of those moments?
Every day there's regrets and missed opportunities and pictures I wish I had made or couldn't make. Or you see the picture, you raise your camera and it's already passed. But I think you just have to, you can't dwell on it, you can't think about it. It's better to let that stuff just sort of wash over you and not to think about it. Because in photography, we have much more kind of failures than successes. I mean, if you edit your work through, you go through thousands of pictures and eventually you find a few good ones. I mean, they're all good, but you're looking for the extraordinary.
Now, this is probably a tricky question and one I doubt you'll want to answer, but which photo do you like the most? Which photo are you most proud of?
Well, I think of my photographs almost like children, and you like different pictures for different reasons. The best pictures are the ones which were the easiest to make. I remember shooting out of my car window, sitting in the back seat of a taxi in Bombay, and literally raising my camera, making 2 exposures and getting one of the best pictures I've ever made, as opposed to, trekking through the Himalayas for 10 days and finally getting to the place and taking the picture. Being in the right place at the right time in photography is key. I mean, that's everything.
Now, you're based in the United States, you live in New York, but you've traveled extensively around Asia specifically. I mean, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Cambodia is just a few of the places. What is it about Asia that really draws you?
For me, Asia is home. To me, this is the part of the world that I love. There's such depth of culture and geography, and there's so much variety when you think of a place like sort of Afghanistan and that world. And then just sort of next door you have India and Nepal and Tibet. The cultures go back thousands of years. Architecture, the language, the way people dress, everything is so distinct. There's such a unique culture here, unlike, say, Europe or the United States, which has become this homogenous, kind of a globalization of culture.
Coming up, Steve explains how he tracked down the Afghan girl who catapulted him to photographic fame.
I thought there was absolutely no way we would ever be able to find her.
Living Golf Minute in time with Rolex.
When I was born, the first 9 holes of the golf course were built, and somebody had to put the flags in for the opening the following day, and my mom did that. She put the 9 flags on each of the front 9, and I was born the following day, so that's how close my relationship is to this place.
The family history in this area, you were farmers originally?
Yeah, that's how my family got the job. My father became a greenkeeper, and my mom and my grandmother used to work here at the clubhouse. Yeah. 86 was my first year as professional, so I lived here all the way until 93.
So as a little boy, you'd come home from school and literally the 9th green was just here. You'd walk outside the door.
Correct. Yeah, that's it.
So the exhibition is between darkness and light. What does that mean?
For me, photography light is so important to a picture, and I love to photograph at night or when the light's very low, and to get a nice, interesting mix of shadows and light and shape. To me, that's where I think most of my work is done. This is the blue city of Jodhpur in Rajasthan, India. And there's this custom, this tradition where many of the people paint their homes blue. Not everybody, but many people do. And it's just this poetry, this harmony. And I photographed this scene just after sunset. And the shapes and the design and the colors, it's just so beautiful to me. And the architecture is so, you feel like this could be 100 or 200 years ago. Every building is another family, and there's lights and all sorts of things. I think there's so many little stories just in that one photograph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is actually Holi. It's a Hindu festival particularly in Rajasthan, where they get together and they dance and they're drinking and they're carrying on and they're throwing a lot of color. The color is not only sort of like a powder, but this also they mix it with water, and they're just throwing it everywhere. And if you walk through the streets of any part of Rajasthan, you're just going to get covered in color. It's just crazy. It's like this big party that goes on all day.
Mm. Sounds wonderful. Now, you worked for a newspaper when you first left university from Pennsylvania State University, but your first freelance gig was in India. What did you find when you got to India? How did it affect you?
India was like another planet to me. It was like stepping into another time, or everything was different. But that's what I loved about it. I loved being shocked, and everything was sort of like incredible. And it really gets you out of your comfort zone in every sense, and you really feel alive, and everything is so kind of vibrant. I've been back to India, I would say 80 or 90 times since that first trip, and there's still many places I haven't seen and yet to go to.
Is it right that you were supposed to go for 2 months, but you ended up staying for 2 years?
My first trip to India was actually scheduled for about 6 weeks, and I suddenly just fell in love with the whole subcontinent, South Asia, and that 6 weeks turned into 2 years. And I literally didn't come back. I was in India, I went to Pakistan, went into Afghanistan twice, Nepal, and I just didn't want. In fact, when I went home after 2 years, I returned back to Afghanistan a month later and stayed for another 6 months.
So you made your name in Afghanistan with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan back in '79. How did you actually get into the country?
I was in a small hotel in northern Pakistan in 1979. I met some refugees who told me that this war was raging literally right across the border, and they invited me to go in and photograph. And I thought, well, that sounds like an adventure. So I went in with them and spent 2 weeks, and I had never been in a war zone. I'd never been shot at. I must admit I was a bit frightened about the whole thing. But it was I would say this story really got under my skin. And I had to go back time and time again, maybe 30 times.
Were you aware at the time of how important it was that you were taking these pictures and you were actually getting them out to the world?
I just was just on a kind of an expeditionary, kind of exploring, kind of wandering around. But a few months later, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, went over, basically took it over. And my photographs, which were already some months old, suddenly were being published